Hello and welcome to Rain's Kitchen and Garden. My name is Rain. Today I'm making some healthy whole wheat bread. This is part of my bread baking series. I hope you enjoy it. All right, let's make some healthy whole wheat bread. I'm going to put 1 cup or 250 mils of warm water into my little bowl here. I've heated that up to 105 to 115 Fahrenheit. That's 40 to 46 Celsius. And I have 1.5 tablespoons or 15 grams of active dry yeast that I'm going to sprinkle into that warm water. Don't just dump it in, because it will become a clump and it might be hard to mix up. All right, and I'm going to add a pinch of brown sugar. And for those of you who don't know what a pinch is, imagine this is your bowl of brown sugar or regular sugar. You take your fingers, you pinch, and that's your pinch. Everyone's pinch is a different size, but it doesn't matter. So I'm just going to mix all of that up with my fork. The warm water is going to melt my brown sugar at the same time. And the reason why we proof our yeast for the most part is just to make sure that it's good. We want to make sure that it gets nice and foamy, because when it gets nice and foamy, then we know it's active. If you come back in 10 minutes and you see that it looks exactly the same, then your yeast is probably not good anymore. So better get some new yeast, otherwise your bread won't rise. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to top this with cling film. And I'm going to keep that in a nice warm spot for 10 minutes. I love doing that. Until it's nice and foamy. Let's check our yeast. It's definitely doing okay because it's very foamy. It's very foamy. Look at this. It's nearly tripled in size. So I'm going to set that aside for just now. And I've got a very big bowl here, my aluminum biggest bowl that I have. And what I'm going to do is in the big bowl, I'm going to add some buttermilk. I've got right here 1.5 cups or 375 mils of buttermilk. And I've heated that up to 90 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 32 degrees Celsius. I've got some maple syrup, 1/4 cup of maple syrup. That's about 75 grams. I have 1/4 cup of light tasting olive oil. That's about 60 mils. A lot of these recipes call for canola oil, and I'm just not a fan of that taste. So I use light tasting olive oil in all of the recipes that call for oil in my baking. I have a tablespoon of salt. That's about 18 grams. All right, and now what I'm going to do is add 2 cups of whole wheat flour. That's about 315 grams. There we go. And I'm going to use a spatula and mix that until it's nice and creamy. Okay, that's nice and creamy. So I'm going to add my yeast mixture. Sorry for the banging. This bowl is huge. And my camera is just above it, so I don't have too much room. You know, this is my camera's right there, so sometimes there's a lot of banging. All right, I'm going to add the remaining whole wheat flour. Let me just get this here. Put the rest of the whole wheat flour in there. That's a cup, which is what, 160-ish grams? It'll be in the recipe that I put below. I don't remember offhand right now. So I'm going to mix all of that up. Scraping down the sides. All right, let me move a few of these bowls around here to give myself some room. Now I've got my bread flour. In total, I have 3.5 to 4 cups of bread flour. That's anywhere from 545 to 625 grams. Now I'm going to be adding 1/2 cup at a time, that's about 75 grams at a time, to my mixture, and I'm gonna keep mixing. The original recipe calls for you to do this with a kitchen mixer, with a dough paddle. I do not have a kitchen mixer. It is on my wish list, but I don't have one at the moment, so I'm doing this all by hand. When it gets a little too difficult for me to use my spatula, which is, it's almost there, I'm going to turn it out and just knead it. Knead all of that flour in by hand. Yeah, it's getting a little too hard for me right now. So I'm going to take some of that bread flour, put some out just on my workspace so I have it handy. And I've got about 1/2 cup left in the bowl because the recipe does say 3.5 to 4 cups. So let's see if I'm going to use it all. I'll just make sure that there's flour here. And I'll turn my dough out. I'm going to make sure I scrape the sides to get everything out. It's still a little sticky. Before I get my hands filled with flour and dough, I'm going to pour a little bit of olive oil into my big bowl here. I know I'm doing this off camera, I just don't have room to show you, but you see that little pool of olive oil down there? That's probably a couple of tablespoons. The reason why I did that is because when the dough is all kneaded, we're going to put that back into the bowl and turn it over a couple of times just to make sure that it gets nice and oily while it rises. I'm going to be kneading my dough for anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes, trying to incorporate all of the bread flour. Well, it took me about 11 to 12 minutes to be able to get this into a consistency that was nice and smooth and elasticy. One little tip for you is that if you're doing this, basically if you put your hand on it and pull back, it'll stick slightly, but you won't have any dough on you. That's when you know you've gotten it to the right consistency, but don't cheap out on the kneading time because it really needs that. I actually had to stop and go back and get more bread flour. I used the entire 4 cups and it was still sticking to my hand, so I actually used an extra couple of spoonfuls of bread flour. So now in my oiled bowl, I'm going to put my bread in there, my dough, And I'm going to flip it around a couple of times just to make sure it gets covered with that oil. And I'm going to put some cling film on that and put it in a nice warm spot so it'll rise for 90 minutes, about 90 minutes. You want it to double in size. I have two loaf pans here. They're 9 by 5 inches or 23 by 13 centimeters, and I grease them very well with butter. You can use whatever you want. You don't have to use butter. The original recipe calls for canola oil, but I'm not a fan of canola oil. I don't like how it tastes, so I use butter. So let's take a look at our whole wheat bread dough. It's definitely risen because it's almost at the top of this huge bowl. I'm going to keep the cling film because I'm going to be using it. Now I'm going to dust a little bit of that bread flour onto my surface here and turn the dough out. It should plop right out. There it goes. Because we had the olive oil. So a little bit of bread flour on top. I'm going to divide this in two. Now I'm just eyeballing it. If you want, you could weigh this and make sure you have even loaves. But I'm just going to eyeball it. This is a great tool, a little spatula. I'm going to put one aside for now. And what I'm doing is I'm patting it down into a long rectangle. Doesn't have to be a perfect rectangle. Okay, now let's fold that in three like we'd be folding a letter. Turn it around, pat it down again into a long rectangle. I'm folding it in half lengthwise, and then I'm going to roll it. I'm going to roll it just about a little longer than the length of my loaf pans. Okay, I'm going to tuck in the ends like this, and into the loaf pan it goes. I'm going to pat it down a little bit. All right, and I'm going to do the same thing for the second loaf. Just going to pat it down into a rectangle, and the reason I'm doing this is just to make sure that the dough is even, because if it's thinner on one end and thicker on another, it's not going to bake evenly. All right, fold that like you would a letter, turn it around, pat it down again. Fold it in half, seam side down, roll it. Tuck it under the ends, and into your loaf pan it goes, pressing down a little bit. Now I'm going to cover my bread with cling film. And I'm going to put it in a nice warm spot for about an hour so it can rise. What I'm looking for is that it will rise about an inch above the rim of the pan. So it could take a little longer for you, but check after 1 hour. I think that my loaves are ready. They have definitely risen to at least 1 inch above the rim. They're looking great, actually. I wonder if I can show you. You see? They've risen quite a bit. So I preheated my oven to 375 degrees Fahrenheit. That's 190 degrees Celsius in gas mark 5. And I'm going to put them in the oven for about 40 minutes until they're golden brown and the bread pulls away from the sides of the loaf pans. My bread is baked very well and it smells delicious. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn these out onto a cooling rack. And I'm going to let them cool a little bit before I try them. This healthy whole wheat bread is so easy to make. Let me know in the comments if you try it. Thanks so much for watching, my friends. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. See you next time on Rain's Kitchen and Garden. Bye!